Hey guys, today we stand in the middle of a bustling cafe. The hiss of espresso machines and the murmur of voices wrapping around you like an invitation. You inhale the rich aroma of roasted beans, your eyes scanning the chalkboard menu as fingertips hover over the choices. Steam coils from the latte cup in your hand, warm promise against your palm. Outside, traffic hums. People weave past. Each conversation a subtle dance of ask and give. As you ask for almond milk instead of cows, switching sizes with a casual smile. You're already in the thick of negotiation. And if you think negotiation has nothing to do with your morning coffee order, think again. You've just requested an upgrade without paying extra. Wielding your words like a silent superpower. Right here and now, you hold the power to shape outcomes, to bend the world toward what you want, one choice at a time. This is your invitation. Armor up and step into the silent arena of influence that exists in every exchange. Because once you see negotiation for the everyday superpower, it is. You stop waiting for permission. You seize it. You step into your office building, ID badge at the ready. And as the elevator doors open, you pivot the negotiation baton into a business rhythm. Each assignment request becomes an opportunity to shape your environment. You negotiate a 2-week buffer on that looming report, pitching it as an investment in impeccable quality rather than a mere delay. You cite your track record of on-point analyses and quick pivots, and you anchor your ask to real value delivered. You swap tasks with a teammate, highlighting how your unique expertise lifts the entire project. Every email is a mini parlay. You tweak phrasing, adopt a collaborative tone, and weave in open-ended questions like, how could we adjust this timeline to achieve the best result? Your meeting prep becomes strategic intel gathering, anticipating objections and holding a BATNA in reserve. In this arena, negotiation isn't a separate skill. It's the engine driving your daily work. You mark mental cues, the slight shift in posture when you propose, the eager nod when you frame benefits. You adjust your offer, sweeten your end, anticipate objections before they even surface. You know that willingness to walk away becomes your secret weapon. Sometimes you simply say, if we can't align on timeline, let's explore alternate resourcing. And just like that, you shift from uncertainty to authority. Home is its own negotiating ground. You negotiate curfew and chores with kids, balancing firmness with warmth. You plan choices on the table. Would you prefer dinner at 6 or 6:30? And you watch them weigh options like little boardroom execs. You anchor bedtime routines around a story reward system, using clarity and consistency as your leverage. Your partner brings home a surprise bill, and you negotiate spending by mapping out joint goals, vacation fund, car maintenance, the dream home down the road. Instead of reacting with frustration, you frame the discussion as mutual problem solving, asking, what's most important to us this month? You align on priorities, trade off extra date night budget for deferred home upgrades, and emerge unified rather than resentful. You realize boundaries become your foundation. They reflect respect for your time, energy, and collective vision. You keep a ledger of small wins, the TV off by 9, a weekend chore swapped that sparks a family barbecue, negotiation turning routine friction into harmonious collaboration. When plans with friends take shape, you negotiate like a pro. You propose brunch at that new cafe, anchored by rave reviews. Yet you open the floor. What time works best for everyone? You listen for hesitations. A 10 a.m. slot feels rushed to some. So you counter with an 11 a.m. start and promise to secure reservations. You anchor first to create the frame, then you adapt. Now, one friend suggests bowling. Another hints at hiking, so you craft a hybrid. Brunch, then a scenic walk. Everyone feels heard, and the group momentum builds. Splitting the bill? You negotiate in advance, establishing fair shares or rotating treat days. You avoid awkward math by tossing out. Let's set a flat rate per head, and I'll handle the tip. Next time disagreements appear, venue, timing, price. You wield your negotiation compass, guiding your circle toward consensus and preserving the vibe that bonds you. Even at your local market, you slip into negotiation mode. Vendors beckon with bright produce stacks. Price is fixed, yet flexing under your polite persistence. You test the waters. What's your best price for a dozen limes? You pause. Let silence do the heavy lifting. Watching the seller weigh your tone and genuine interest. When they counter, you pivot. If I take 2 dozen, can we meet in the middle? You fold value stacking into your ask. Cash on hand. Repeat visits. Referral potential for bulk orders. You hustle. You haggle. You walk away only when the deal reflects your intention. And if the negotiation stalls, you don't sulk. You pivot to another stall, leaving them room to reconsider. By the time you exit with crisp notes in hand and citrus bounty under your arm, you've reinforced the rule. Nothing is fixed until you make it so. You treat each stall like a negotiation lab, refining your instincts, calibrating your leverage, and cementing your confidence one bargain at a time. In the digital realm, you negotiate with keystrokes. Discounts pop up in chatbots and support line windows. You ask for loyalty perks or free trials. You craft concise messages. I am a long-term member and reaching out before renewal. Could you extend my subscription at the current rate? You mirror their policy language, then anchor your ask to your track record. Daily engagement, referrals, glowing feedback. When they reply with a stiff no, you pivot with practiced empathy. I understand policy constraints. Are there promotional bundles or feature upgrades you can recommend? You stare at typing indicators, calibrate your patience, and employ strategic silence. Then you land that one-time promo link or free month extension. In return, they secure a satisfied customer. Email negotiations follow the same pattern. Clear subject lines, direct asks, value framing, and gracious follow-up. Your inbox becomes a front line for influence. No badges, no boardrooms, just your words carving advantage. But perhaps the most vital negotiation happens within. You face self-doubt, internal voices questioning your worth. You step into that arena and counter with confidence. I deserve growth. I'll ask for that raise. You anchor to past achievements, mirror your own potential, and label your emotions. I feel nervous, yet I'm capable. You negotiate with fear, reframing each I can't as, what would it take for me to succeed? When doubt pushes back, you press forward. Equating resilience with negotiation muscle, you turn every setback into a data point. What feedback can I extract? And you wield it to fuel your next ask. Your inner dialogue becomes a strategic negotiation session. You hold your BATNA, envision your anchoring statements, practice your tone. In this crucible, you forge unshakable self-belief and rewire your mindset so that every external negotiation finds its counterpart in the quiet power of self-advocacy. In your personal relationships, negotiation underpins trust. When conflict surfaces, You don't dodge, you lean in. You listen for underlying needs: time, space, appreciation instead of reacting. You ask open-ended questions. What matters most to you right now? You mirror feelings. I hear that you're frustrated about our schedule, and label emotions. It sounds like you feel overlooked. You pause, respect silence, then propose solutions anchored in shared values. Let's carve out Sunday mornings for us. How does that align with your work goals? You approach each conversation as a joint project, not a competition. You avoid ultimatums. You trade concessions on less critical fronts to gain on what truly counts. You celebrate every compromise as a victory, proof that collaboration and connection rise when you frame desires as mutual gains. In high-stakes moments, salary reviews, contract signings, major purchases, you wield everything you've honed. You research market data down to median rates, pegging your anchor above your ideal. You prepare your opening script, practice it aloud until it feels like second nature. You wear your confidence in your posture, breathe deliberately, and speak with measured pace. When pushback comes, you tread tactical silence, observe micro-expressions, and unearth real objections. You pivot to alternatives, reinforce your BATNA, and frame outcomes as win-win. This package aligns with performance metrics and ensures I remain fully invested. Your negotiation armor glints with the polish of daily drills. Each concession emerges from strategic leverage points. You don't capitulate under pressure, you recalibrate and counteroffer. Then you land that promotion, secure the deal, or purchase that car on your terms. When you carry this mindset forward, life shifts. Every interaction becomes a deliberate exchange of value, influence, and respect. You no longer drift through requests, you drive them. You trade inertia for action, silence for strategic pauses, uncertainty for anchored clarity. You transform everyday chatter into a tapestry of opportunity. Negotiation becomes less a skill set and more a lens through which you view every moment. You engage with intention, ready to shape outcomes that align with your goals and values. This is the realm where you belong, the arena where confident voices meet open ears, where empathy meets purpose, where courage becomes your currency. You've armed yourself with the truth. The secret to shaping your world lies in asking, listening, and owning your power with authenticity. You step into your day aware that every interaction you have is a negotiations disguised as ordinary conversation. You negotiate your morning alarm with yourself, snooze or rise, productivity or extra sleep. The choice you voice frames the entire day. From the tone you use with your partner over a coffee cup to the phrasing you choose when asking your colleague for help, negotiation bubbles beneath every word you utter. It's the unseen engine powering your outcomes. Negotiation isn't a cloak reserved for boardrooms or high-stakes deals. It isn't a distant plateau that only CEOs, trial lawyers, or extroverted sales gurus can reach. When you request a deadline extension, you're negotiating. When you diplomatically suggest a restaurant, you're negotiating. When you gently ask a friend for advice, you're negotiating. It's not an elite club, and no secret handshake is required, only intention and communication. Every person, regardless of title or temperament, can master this life skill. And you've been taught that negotiation is confrontational or manipulative, that it requires hard bargaining, aggressive tactics, or strategic deception. You might feel squeamish at the word itself. Images of dramatic haggling across a polished mahogany table flood your mind. But real negotiation isn't a fierce duel. It's a collaborative exchange. It's about asking with intention, listening with purpose, and connecting needs to outcomes. When you shift from win-lose imagery to win-win mindset, you unlock the true power of influence and with integrity. You notice that some people assume you're either born a negotiator or not. That extroverts, natural born talkers, or those with big personalities hold an innate advantage. You've seen charismatic colleagues breeze through salary talks, sealing deals with bold pronouncements. But you also know quiet professionals who, step by step, master each tactic until they negotiate with equal or greater effectiveness. Negotiation is a skill you develop, not a gift you inherit. Your personality is the lens, not the limit. You shape your approach to play to your strengths. You don't need theatrical bravado or a shark-like grin to influence outcomes. Instead, you need curiosity and clarity. When you ask your neighbor to borrow their lawnmower, your tone and timing matter more than force. You frame your request with reciprocity. I'll return it by Saturday and help you with yard work next week. A simple exchange becomes a negotiation. You practice empathy, imagining their schedule and concerns. This transforms a casual favor into a mutual value exchange, and you get more than borrowed power tools. You build goodwill. In friend groups, you perceive negotiation as the art of harmonizing desires. When you suggest a movie night, you propose options, 2 or 3 titles you know they'll like. You phrase, "Would you be up for a thriller on Friday or a comedy on Saturday?" This open-ended offer invites collaboration. You're negotiating preferences, time, and mood. Without conflict, every nuance of your phrasing shapes the response. This daily practice hones your skill, reminding you that negotiation isn't a specialized activity. It's a fundamental mode of human connection. Society pushes myths that negotiation is about winning at all costs or tricking the other side. You've heard stories of ruthless dealmakers who bluff, intimidate, or bait and switch. But you also see the fallout: mistrust, burned bridges, deals that collapse. You reject this narrow version. Your focus is long-term rapport, not short-term victory. You anchor your strategy in transparency. Here's what matters to me, and here's why it makes sense. By aligning interests, you build outcomes that last, rather than ephemeral triumphs marked by regret. Even your silent habits count as negotiation. When you strong-arm an extra hour of leisure by delaying chores, you negotiate with your future self. You set internal agreements. Complete 5 tasks, then relax. This self-negotiation shapes discipline and balance. When you resist a late-night snack, you negotiate boundaries with your cravings, reminding yourself why you care about health goals. When you wake up early, you negotiate a better morning routine. Internal negotiation lays the groundwork for external success, proving that cultivation begins within. At work, negotiation hides in everyday emails. You frame a request. Could we explore shifting our weekly check-ins to Wednesdays? It aligns with project milestones and gives us better momentum. You avoid vague language and instead offer clear value. You anticipate concerns. I understand Tuesdays suit your schedule. Wednesday offers midweek recalibration. This anticipatory approach diffuses resistance. Your colleague feels heard, but your perspective guides the conversation. This everyday clarity is negotiation in action, purposeful communication, producing better alignment. You might believe that negotiation demands extensive formal training or privileged access. You think only the well-connected learn the ropes, but your library of podcasts, articles, and free online resources arms you with strategies. When you absorb a negotiation tip and test it in an email, you learn faster than in a classroom. Your boardroom becomes the world, and your experiments yield real-time feedback. You adapt, refine, and evolve. No expensive consultancy needed, just your willingness to practice and reflect. In family dynamics, negotiation is the invisible thread weaving harmony. You propose chore charts with choices. Would you prefer vacuuming on Mondays or Thursdays? You trade screen time for reading, listening to objections and offering alternatives. If you read 2 chapters, we'll watch an extra half hour of your show. This trade-off respects autonomy and fosters cooperation. You avoid commands. You ask questions. You guide rather than dictate. This approach nurtures respect and accountability. Classic negotiation equipped with empathy. You might think negotiation must be aggressive or antagonistic, but you find that calm dialogue often yields better results. You steer clear of ultimatums and instead ask, what would make this work for you? This question unlocks hidden barriers, time constraints, budget pressures, emotional concerns. In doing so, you swap confrontation for collaboration, you shape the narrative, paint possibilities, and guide outcomes. You become the strategic partner and not an adversary. And that shift in perception transforms every conversation into a positive exchange. When you step into a store, you assume price tags are absolute. Yet you've learned that polite inquiry, "Is this your best price?" can lead to discounts. You fold in elements of leverage. "I'm ready to buy now if we can align at this number." Vendors respect your willingness to commit and may meet you halfway. This isn't deception, it's value alignment. You work together to find a price that fits both interests. Each interaction boosts your confidence, reinforcing the lesson that every number is negotiable when approached with respect. In digital negotiations with subscriptions, trials, or customer support, you harness influence with carefully worded messages. You draft, "I've been a loyal subscriber for 2 years. Could you extend my current rate before renewal?" You mirror policy language, express appreciation, and anchor your ask to your engagement history. When chat agents respond with rigid policies, you pivot. "I understand, but is there an upcoming promotion I could lock in now?" Your calm persistence often yields concessions or bonus perks. Negotiation is just as alive behind a screen. You've been conditioned to view negotiation as an event, a climactic battle or special meeting. But you realize that this mentality creates artificial boundaries. Negotiation isn't confined by calendars or conference rooms. It flows through your morning check-in call, your hallway small talk, and even your weekly grocery list. It's as natural as breathing. Every question, offer, or suggestion you make is a negotiation. You don't need a formal label to tap into this skill. It's embedded in your humanity. Perhaps you believe negotiation requires a hidden arsenal of tactics, a secret lexicon of maneuvers. But you discover the truth. And the most powerful tactics are simple: clarity, curiosity, active listening, and empathy. These interchangeable tools shape every exchange. When you ask, you pause. When you listen, you observe tone and posture. When you empathize, You reflect needs back. It seems like timing is your biggest concern. You adapt your ask to address that concern. You learn to calibrate, to ask, and to wait, to speak and to breathe. That simplicity is your strongest ally. You reject the myth that negotiation must feel awkward or forced. You weave it into authentic dialogue. When you discuss responsibilities with your spouse, you share needs and fears. I feel overwhelmed by weekends packed with chores. How can we balance tasks so we both get downtime? You negotiate schedules, swap duties, and emerge with renewed partnership. No one wins or loses. You co-create solutions. And you don't stage a negotiation, you live it. You treat every conversation as a chance to align intentions and manifest shared values. By reframing negotiation as a life skill, you unlock its liberating power. You stop waiting for a formal invitation to negotiate and instead initiate conversations with intention. You step into the interconnected dance of questions and responses, offers and counteroffers, listening and clarifying. You release neuroses about appearing demanding, because anyone who issues demands without context forfeits respect. Instead, you craft requests that honor both your goals and others' needs. This mutual respect elevates every exchange. As you integrate this universal art into your daily rhythm, you become a beacon of influence and collaboration. You realize that negotiation isn't a one-time act, but an ongoing dance, subtle, fluid, and deeply human. You amplify your impact, foster trust, and shape outcomes with grace. You no longer fear confrontation. You embrace conversation. You harness negotiation as the power behind every word, every gesture, every decision. And in doing so, you reclaim agency over your life, inviting progress at every turn. Every time you speak, you hold a choice to drift passively or to engage with purpose. Negotiation isn't a box you tick. It's the invisible current shaping your career, your relationships, and your sense of self. Recognize its presence in small moments and grand decisions alike. Train your mind to see every question, every request, and every silence as an opening, an invitation to align value and build understanding. Embrace negotiation not as an event, but as the essential rhythm of your life. You breathe deeply and stand at the threshold of your next conversation, feeling the steady beat of your heart. In this moment, you recognize that negotiation begins within, long before any words form on your lips. You cultivate a mindset that primes you for influence and impact, self-belief, clarity of your value, and the courage to ask. This is your inner battleground, where victories forge the armor you wear into every exchange. First, you anchor your self-belief. You remind yourself you belong in this room. Doubt flickers at the edge of your thoughts. Who am I to ask for more? But you counter with evidence. You inventory past successes, the client you retained, the project you steered, the problem you solved. You speak to yourself. I've earned this seat at the table. You visualize each win as a badge on your chest, stacking them until your confidence stands unshakable. You know that negotiation is not reserved for the confident. It creates the confident. With every intentional ask, you prove to yourself that you deserve to be heard. You cultivate this self-belief through small daily rituals. Each morning, you review 3 achievements from the day before, however minor. You acknowledge times you spoke up, posed a question, or held your ground. You internalize these reminders like battle cries. I am capable, I am prepared, I am valuable. This repetition rewires your subconscious, shifting default self-talk from "I can't" to "I will." You rehearse affirmations aloud. My ideas matter. My time is worthy. I negotiate my worth. You plant these seeds of confidence so deeply that they bloom instantly when you lay out your ask. Next, you clarify your unique value. You ask, what sets me apart? You examine your skill set, your experience, your results. You distill your contributions into concrete metrics, revenue growth percentages, process improvements, time saved. You frame your value as undeniable facts, not hazy perceptions. You prepare bullet points that capture your strengths. Let cross-functional team of 10 to deliver product 2 weeks early. Secured vendor discounts that saved 15% annually. Authored training materials that reduced onboarding time by 30%. Each point becomes a weapon in your arsenal, ready to defend your position with irrefutable proof. You also consider the needs of the other side. You reflect, how have I added value to their goals? By mapping your accomplishments to their priorities, you shape your narrative to resonate. If your manager values process efficiency, you highlight streamlined workflows you championed. If your partner seeks revenue expansion, you spotlight deals you closed. You build a matrix, your contributions on one axis, their objectives on the other. This clarity lets you speak in a language they understand, demonstrating that your ask isn't self-serving, but symbiotic. With self-belief and clarity in place, you train your courage muscle. You frame courage not as absence of fear, but as action despite fear. You lean into apprehension like a runner leaning into wind resistance, as it builds strength. You set daily micro-challenges. Ask for a minor favor you'd normally avoid. Negotiate a slightly better deal on a purchase. Request feedback you fear might sting. Each small win fuels your willingness to tackle bigger asks. When you secure that free appetizer at your favorite restaurant, will you celebrate? When you negotiate a later checkout time on a hotel stay, you pat yourself on the back. You learn that fear shrinks under the weight of repeated, successful practice. You also create a mental rehearsal routine before any significant negotiation. You close your eyes and visualize the scene, the room layout, the person across the table, the phrasing of your opening line. You imagine their initial responses, yes, no, maybe, and mentally script your counter. You see yourself standing tall, speaking slowly, and pausing strategically. You hear your calm, confident tone echo back. You feel the energy of grounded belief emanate from your posture. This mental run-through primes your nervous system to execute under pressure, converting adrenaline into focused energy. Now, you unite these 3 pillars, self-belief, clarity, and courage, into a cohesive mindset. You approach every ask with a ritual. Anchor internally to your worth, present external evidence, and launch with boldness. You hold that ask as permanent, like a flag planted firmly in the ground, refusing to budge unless you choose. When you sense the urge to hedge or apologize creeping in, I'm sorry to ask, but you catch it immediately and release it. You replace weak openers with strong frames. I'm asking for, here's what I propose. Based on my contributions, I'd like. Your language mirrors your mindset, concise, assertive, and anchored. You also protect your mindset with boundaries. You guard against negative voices, both internal and external, that chip away at your belief. When a colleague dismisses your idea, you don't internalize their cynicism. Instead, you detach. Their reaction is their issue, not a reflection of my worth. You're anchored to your evidence list. You refuse to linger on offhand comments. You maintain an inner fortress built on documented successes and unwavering self-respect. In meetings, you monitor your posture as a gauge of mindset, shoulders back, spine tall, chest open. These physical alignments broadcast confidence. You steady your breath, and inhale for clarity, and exhale for calm. You speak from your diaphragm, letting your voice carry conviction. You maintain eye contact that conveys respect, not intimidation. These nonverbal cues reinforce your mental state, and the room responds in kind. People lean in when you speak, nodding as they sense your grounded presence. When it's time to ask, you choose your moment with intention. You observe the energy in the conversation and align your ask to a natural lull or a point of shared understanding. You introduce your ask succinctly. I'd like to discuss adjusting my compensation to reflect the increased scope I've taken on. You pause. You breathe. You resist the urge to fill the silence. You let your self-belief and clarity echo, compelling the other side to respond. Courage shows itself most vividly when you face pushback. You remind yourself, no is part of the process. You reframe rejection as feedback. You ask follow-up questions. I understand your concern. What criteria would make this adjustment possible? Your calm curiosity disarms resistance. You hold your ground without rigidity, adjusting tactically, but never capitulating on core needs. You leverage your clarity matrix. Given that my projects have generated X in revenue, I believe this adjustment aligns with market benchmarks. You speak with purpose, guided by your self-belief and evidence. Every maybe or tell me more fuels your resolve to press forward. You treat objections like puzzle pieces, collecting each insight to refine your approach. You maintain your posture and your steady breath, protecting your mindset. You speak with the voice that carries the quiet authority of someone who has rehearsed the conversation within themselves, well before stepping into the room. Outside formal negotiations, you apply this mindset in casual asks. You request a slight menu substitution at dinner, referencing dietary needs and friendly rapport. You negotiate seating upgrades on flights by acknowledging airline policy and your loyalty status. You craft messages to service reps that mirror corporate language, then anchor to your tenure or engagement. Each scenario becomes a micro-laboratory for your mindset, reinforcing that you carry this power everywhere. When doubt surfaces, especially before big milestones, you return to your ritual. You revisit your evidence list. You mentally rehearse your opening. You visualize success. You speak your affirmation once more. I am worthy. I am prepared. I will ask boldly. You physically enact that belief, standing tall and speaking confidently in the mirror. By the time you walk into the conversation, fear has been transformed into focus. You also surround yourself with allies who reinforce your mindset. You share your ask preparation with a trusted colleague or friend. You solicit honest feedback. How did I come across? What tweak would make my phrasing sharper? Their validation and constructive criticism bolster your self-belief and clarify your value statement. You practice together, role-playing objections and responses. You laugh at missteps and celebrate progress. This supportive environment catalyzes your courage, making each real negotiation feel like a natural extension of your practice sessions. Over time, your mindset evolves from fragile to fortified. You begin to look forward to asks rather than dread them. You savor the feel of anchored confidence, the clarity of value, and the thrill of courageous action. You internalize that negotiation isn't a sporadic act, but an ongoing expression of self-advocacy. You no longer wait for permission. You command it. Now, equipped with these mental pillars, you approach every negotiation, big or small, with consistency and conviction. You speak from a place of unwavering self-belief, armed with crystal clear evidence of your value and propelled by the courage to ask. This mindset turns every conversation into a crafted exchange of value and respect. And as you step forward, you carry this truth. When your inner game is mastered, the outer game falls effortlessly into place. You lean into your desk, fingers poised above the keyboard, heart aflutter. In this charged moment, you realize that confidence isn't a flashy display or an innate gift. It's a muscle you build, rep by rep, negotiation by negotiation. You clamp your shoulders back, lift your chin, and ground your feet firmly on the floor. This physical stance becomes your secret signal, a nonverbal cue that broadcasts, "You belong here." First, you reclaim your posture as your ally. You imagine an invisible string pulling you upward from the crown of your head. Shoulders drop away from your ears, chest opens, spine aligns. You feel the energy pulse through your core, an unspoken announcement of presence. With each inhale, you draw air into a steady belly breath, expanding your diaphragm. With each exhale, you release tension, letting shoulders drop slightly more. These breaths become your battle rhythm, sustaining calm under pressure. Next, you harness the power of visualization. You close your eyes for a moment, picturing the negotiation space. You see the table, the chairs, the person across from you. You visualize yourself seated tall, voice smooth and measured. You replay your opening lines, clear, assertive, unhesitating. You hear your calm, resonant tone echo back. You envision the other side leaning in, nodding, leaning toward agreement. This mental rehearsal wires your neural pathways, turning the imagined into the achievable. With every visualization session, you prime your mind and body to perform with unwavering confidence. You also refine your internal dialogue. Gone are the timid scripts. "I hope they'll say yes." "I wonder if I'm asking too much." Instead, you speak to yourself with conviction. "I've prepared thoroughly. I know my value. I will ask boldly." You anchor these affirmations to today's practice. I am steady. I am clear. I am persuasive. You repeat them aloud each morning over mirror 2, tilting your chin up a fraction, eyes meeting your own gaze. These repetitions chisel away at self-doubt, forging a mindset of certainty. Language itself becomes your tool. You eliminate verbal hedges. No more kind of, maybe, or I just wanted to ask. Instead, you opt for crisp declaratives. I propose. I request. I will. You practice those phrases until they roll off your tongue with ease. You notice how your heart rate drops when you speak with precise language. You measure the impact. Confident language signals authority. Hesitant language invites doubt. You adjust your speech patterns in everyday conversation, ordering coffee, making small talk, so that by the time you reach your negotiation, confident phrasing is your default. You step up your vocal training. You record yourself on your phone, reading a short script, perhaps the introduction to your ask. You play it back, listening for shaky inflections or rushed syllables. You practice slowing down, enunciating each word, letting vowels ring. You experiment with lower registers, your chest voice, and you mark the difference. A deeper tone exudes calm authority. You rehearse until you hear steady cadence, your voice carrying the assurance of someone who expects to be heard. Confidence also thrives in mastery of detail. You prepare tangible evidence, charts, numbers, case studies, so you never fumble when questions arise. With these materials at your fingertips, you sit forward in your chair, slide the tablet or printout across the table, and state, "Here's the data supporting my proposal." You watch eyes shift to your documentation, curiosity flickering. You've turned potential anxiety, fear of the unknown, into a source of authority. Your preparation isn't just armor, it's an amplifier of confidence. You cultivate a power pose routine before high-stakes moments. Alone in a quiet space, you stand tall, legs slightly apart, hands on hips or raised in a victory V. You hold the pose for 2 minutes. Your body's stress response recalibrates, cortisol drops, testosterone rises. You embody the posture of a warrior primed for victory. At the end of those 2 minutes, you feel a subtle shift. Your shoulders more relaxed, your gaze more direct, your pulse more measured. You step into the conversation carrying that residual power. You practice controlled pauses. When someone else finishes speaking, you count silently to 3 before responding. This pause buys you precious milliseconds to choose your words deliberately. It signals to the other side that you're not hasty, you're thoughtful. You notice how, after a well-placed pause following an objection, the other party often rushes to fill the silence, sometimes with concessions, sometimes with clarifying questions. Your strategic stillness becomes a magnet for information and respect. You also mine micro-victories for confidence. After each negotiation, small or large, you debrief yourself. You jot down what went well. I spoke calmly under pressure. I held the silence after my ask. I referenced data smoothly. You note what could improve. Next time, I'll rehearse my counter-anchor. Or I'll watch for my tendency to rush through objections. By cataloging wins and learnings, you transform every encounter into training ground. You carry these notes into your visualization sessions, reinforcing progress and addressing gaps. When you face setbacks, an unexpected no, a tough question you didn't anticipate, you treat them as opportunities to strengthen, not as signs of weakness. You exhale, reset your posture, and remind yourself, this is feedback, not failure. You ask, what does this reaction teach me? How can I adapt? You incorporate those lessons into your evidence matrix and rehearsal scripts. You view resilience as the cornerstone of unshakable confidence. You also anchor your confidence to purpose. You clarify the why behind each negotiation, your mission, your values, your impact. When you represent a nonprofit seeking funding, you envision the lives improved by that grant. When you request a pay raise, you recall the responsibilities you've embraced and the difference you've made. When you negotiate project timelines, you see the product's potential to delight customers. This higher purpose becomes your North Star, guiding your courage, sustaining your conviction, and broadening your perspective beyond personal gain. You foster a growth mindset around confidence. You tell yourself, every negotiation is a step on an upward spiral. You reject fixed ability beliefs, I'm just not good at this, and replace them with, I'm improving with each effort. You welcome challenges as the very fuel that fires your next descent. You surround yourself with stories of negotiators who blossomed from timid to tenacious, reminding yourself that your own journey mirrors theirs. Confidence is forged not in isolation, but in community. You form a confidence cohort of peers who share negotiation goals. You meet weekly, virtually, or in person to practice opening lines, role-play objections, and share breakthroughs. You celebrate each other's wins and offer constructive feedback on stumbles. This collective accountability accelerates your growth, and you carry that supportive energy into your own negotiations. You maintain your confidence through self-care rituals. You prioritize sleep, knowing that exhaustion erodes mental clarity and amplifies self-doubt. You fuel your body with balanced meals that avoid blood sugar crashes. You move, whether a brisk walk, a gym session, or yoga, to clear mental fog and release endorphins. You meditate briefly before difficult calls to settle racing thoughts. These physical and mental habits become the scaffolding for sustained confidence. When you enter the negotiation room, you enact your confidence ritual. You inhale steadily, adopt your power pose, recite your affirmation, slide your evidence forward, and begin with a clear and steady ask. You speak with conviction because your body, mind, and spirit are united behind that request. You no longer wait for confidence to arrive. You generate it on demand. In the heat of negotiation, you monitor your physical signals. If your heart quickens, you pause, place a hand lightly on the table, and breathe. If you notice your volume creeping higher, you consciously slow your speech. If your gaze drifts downward, you lift it back to eye level. You treat these moments as course corrections, keeping your confidence compass pointed true north. You also detach from outcome to protect your confidence. You define your BATNA clearly, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement before you begin. You remind yourself, I want this, but I don't need this. This mental posture dissolves desperation and fortifies your stance. Whether you secure a yes, a counteroffer, or a polite no, you emerge without shattered confidence, ready to proceed to another opportunity. And every time you practice these rituals, posture alignment, visualization, vocally precise language, strategic pauses, micro-victory debriefs, you embed confidence more deeply into your being. You transform from someone who hopes to negotiate well into someone who knows negotiation is a natural expression of your authentic self. This unshakable presence ripples outward. Colleagues lean in, clients respond with respect, friends open up, and even strangers hear authority in your tone. As you build this confidence muscle, you carry it into every arena, professional, personal, digital, internal. You no longer approach negotiations with trepidation. You anticipate them as arenas for growth and expression. You bask in the calm certainty of your preparation, the clarity of your value, and the courage you've cultivated. You stand not just ready to negotiate, but eager to claim what's yours and to help others find what's theirs. This is the essence of unshakable confidence, a quiet strength forged through purposeful practice, embodied in posture and breath, fortified by purpose and community. When you step into any negotiation, you feel it resonate within you, a tangible hum of steady authority. And with that resonance guiding every word, every pause, every pivot, you know you're unstoppable. You settle into your negotiation cockpit, knowing that confidence is vital, but preparation is your unbreakable armor. Before you utter a single word, you fortify yourself with a meticulously crafted plan. You define your goal, crystal clear and unwavering. You ask, what exactly do I want from this conversation? You refuse to leave room for ambiguity. Is your aim a 10% budget increase, a 4-week project extension, or a car price below market value? You distill your desired outcome into a single sentence that anchors every subsequent move. I'm asking for a 10% raise based on my performance metrics. Next, you determine your minimum acceptable result and your walk-away point. You map 3 tiers: your ideal outcome, your realistic target, and your bottom line. If the number you hear falls below that floor, you're prepared to stand and say, "Thank you for your time." Knowing you have better alternatives, this mental clarity prevents you from conceding under pressure. You visualize each tier, imagining how you'll react if the conversation stalls at each point. You nod respectfully, you pause, you counteroffer, or you calmly draw the line and depart. These predefined thresholds become lighthouses guiding your decisions when emotion threatens to cloud your judgment. With your goal anchor set, you turn opponent mapping into a strategic mission. You collect intelligence on the person across the table. You research their priorities, pressures, and incentives. LinkedIn profiles reveal their recent achievements. Company press releases hint at performance targets. And public filings unveil budget cycles. You identify their pain points, tight deadlines, cost-cutting mandates, personal KPIs, and you frame your ask to address those needs. You sketch a quick empathy map. What do they care about? What fears drive them? What metrics define their success? By aligning your request with their objectives. Approving this timeline will help you meet Q&B deliverables. You transform your ask from a plea into a solution. You also gauge their negotiation style. Are they data-driven analysts who rely on spreadsheets? Are they relationship-focused influencers who respond to stories and rapport? You scan past interactions. Did they respond positively to emails packed with charts? Or did they favor brief phone calls with friendly banter? You adapt your approach to meet them where they are, anticipating their likely objections and scripting responses in advance. This opponent mapping isn't guesswork. It's evidence-based strategy that turns unknown variables into predictable patterns. Once you understand their landscape, you inventory your leverage points. You list every source of strength you bring, unique expertise, alternative options, timing advantages, and relationship capital. Maybe you're the only team member fluent in a critical software, or you hold connections to a vendor network they value. You note your alternatives, other job offers, competing suppliers, personal savings to cover project costs. You remind yourself that leverage isn't reserved for the powerful. It's built from any edge you possess. You write bullet points: unique skill, éxito X. High demand for our service. Backup supplier ready to onboard. Personal flexibility to work weekends. These become your negotiation ammunition. You further refine leverage by quantifying it. Dollars saved, hours regained. Revenue unlocked. Each number becomes a lever you can pull. You prepare visuals. A simple bar chart illustrating projected profits with your proposal versus without it. You assemble success stories. When I negotiated vendor B at 12% below average rates, we saved $50,000 in 6 months. You vow to reference these stories at the moment of maximum impact, letting facts underscore your leverage. With goal, opponent, and leverage in hand, you cement your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You outline the path you'll take if this negotiation falters. Perhaps you'll accept the other job offer awaiting in your inbox, or shift to vendor C, who quoted a slightly higher rate, but with faster delivery. You quantify this alternative. If we can't align on these terms, I'll move forward with the existing supplier who will onboard on MapleBurst at 2% higher rates. By clarifying your BATNA, you neutralize desperation. You free yourself from the trap of take it or leave it. Because you've already decided where you'll leave, you also actively strengthen your BATNA before entering the room. You reach out to backup contacts, secure preliminary approvals, and confirm logistical details. You send emails to vendor C to finalize pricing. You schedule an informal chat with your other potential employer. You obtain a pre-approval letter from the bank. With these contingencies in place, you feel anchored. No matter the outcome, you have a path forward. This preparation shrinks your fear, turning your BATNA into a source of power rather than backup anxiety. Having defined goals, mapped opponents, identified leverage, and secured your BATNA, you pivot to mental rehearsal. You close your eyes and step onto a mental stage. You imagine the room lighting, the seating arrangement, the soft hum of air conditioning. You hear your opening line reverberate with calm assurance. Thank you for meeting. Based on recent deliverables increasing our throughput by 20%, I'd like to discuss adjusting my compensation accordingly. You sense the slight pause from the other side. You see their eyes shift to your prepared data sheet. You hear their potential counter. Our budget is tight. Can we consider a smaller increase? In your mind, you test multiple responses. I understand constraints. We might explore performance bonuses tied to our next milestone. You replay these scenarios from multiple angles. You script both optimistic and pessimistic versions, one where your ask is accepted outright, and another where tough objections arise. You practice your body language, shoulders down, chin level, hands resting lightly on the table. You rehearse your breathing pattern. Inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6. This mental workout primes your nervous system to perform with composure under fire. You repeat the visualization until every muscle memory aligns with your desired behavior. To deepen your rehearsal, you enlist a role-play partner. You brief them on their role, the skeptical finance director, the time-pressed project lead, or the protective spouse. You run through the conversation, asking them to mirror typical objections. You experiment with different pacing, rapid fire back and forth, or slow burn strategic silence. You invite candid feedback. Did my tone convey confidence? Where did I hesitate? You incorporate their insights, adjusting your phrasing and posture until the dialogue flows as naturally as breathing. You also conduct a pre-mortem scenario planning. You list potential derailers, an emergency call pulling the other party away, a surprise amendment in policy, a personal bias against negotiation. For each, you craft a contingency script. If the meeting is cut short, I'll say, I appreciate your time. Can we schedule a follow-up call? Or if policy issues arise, I'll request, could you show me the specific clause so I can address it directly? By envisioning these unknowns, you diffuse their power to throw you off balance. As the negotiation moment nears, you assemble your preparation toolkit. You lay out printouts or open digital tabs, your goal statement, leverage bullet points, BATNA summary, opponent fact sheet, and a condensed objection response cheat sheet. You store them in a neat folder or window cluster, ready to reference without fumbling. You wear your confidence in your posture and voice, but your preparation remains just below the surface, your silent backup plan. You also account for logistical details that influence psychology. You choose a meeting time when both parties are least likely to be tired, mid-morning over Friday afternoon. You ensure the room layout favors collaboration, a round table rather than a confrontational desk. You confirm that decision makers will attend, so you don't waste time repitching later. These small considerations amplify the impact of your preparation, tilting the negotiation environment in your favor. You even rehearse entry and exit lines, and you practice your greeting so it feels warm and authentic. Thanks for joining me today. It's great to connect again. You plan your closing, whether successful or not. I look forward to your feedback on these points and appreciate your consideration. Or, I understand we need more time. Could we reconvene early next week? These framing statements ensure you start and finish with professionalism and poise. By the time you walk into that room, you're more than prepared. You're armored. Your goal sits at the forefront of your mind. Your opponent's priorities align with your proposal. Your leverage stands ready. Your BATNA shines with possibility. And your mental rehearsal has embedded success into your muscle memory. Even if unexpected turns arise, you remain anchored and agile. You know that this negotiation isn't a leap into the unknown. It's a well-charted journey guided by your thorough preparation. In every interaction, corporate boardroom, kitchen table, vendor stall, or digital chat, you employ this 5-step preparation process. You never leave outcomes to chance because you've defined the winning conditions, plotted the other side's terrain, harnessed your power sources, secured your alternatives, and rehearsed every twist and turn. This armor of preparation doesn't guarantee a yes, but it guarantees your power. The power to ask, to adapt, and to walk away with confidence intact. You settle into the charged moment of your next ask, feeling the pulse of possibility in your chest. Every preparation step, your clear goal, your opponent's pressure points, your backup plan, has led you here. This is where the art of the ask transforms from internal armor to external action. You know that nothing happens until you ask, and that ask must land with precision. You inhale slowly, letting your posture radiate calm authority, and you prepare to speak your value into the room. Clarity is your first weapon. You distill your request into a single, unambiguous sentence. Gone are the hedges and qualifiers that dilute impact. You refuse to murmur. I was kind of hoping for. Instead, you state plainly, I am requesting a 15% increase in project budget to secure the additional staffing we need to meet next quarter's deliverables. That one sentence contains your goal, the why, and the context. You've practiced it until those words feel as natural as breathing. When you speak them, you spare no room for misinterpretation. You launch your ask with authority, not apology. You frame it as a strategic recommendation, not a tentative request. You open with, based on the 30% improvement in delivery speed and our upcoming launch timeline, I propose we adjust the budget by 15%. You avoid, sorry to bring this up, or if it's okay. Because every apology chips away at your authority. Your language is declarative, your tone measured, your rhythm steady. You feel the confidence surge as your voice resonates from your core rather than your throat. You own each syllable. Next, you anchor high with purpose. You know that the first figure heard defines the range of possibilities. If your true target sits at a 12% increase, you anchor at 15%. You reason, I'm suggesting 15%. Given the expanded scope and vendor negotiations I've secured, you may mirror. By setting the anchor above your baseline, you create room to negotiate down while still landing above your minimum. You justify it immediately. This reflects the additional deliverables I've assumed and the revenue growth we're forecasting. That combination of boldness and rationale bolsters your position. The moment your ask is complete, you lean back and embrace the silence. You resist the urge to fill the void with nervous chatter or preemptive concessions. Instead, you observe. You watch the other person's eyebrows lift, the way they shift weight in their chair. You note how they tilt their head, scanning for weakness. In that stillness, you gather vital cues. Are they intrigued, skeptical, or ready to agree? You let the silence do the heavy lifting, because silence signals confidence and compels the other party to respond first. As the silence stretches, you prepare to frame your ask as a win-win collaboration. When the other side breaks the quiet with a question or counter, you pivot seamlessly. I understand budget constraints are tight. What if we phase this increase in 2 installments tied to milestone deliverables? That way, we protect cash flow while ensuring we hit our launch targets. You demonstrate empathy for their priorities, cash preservation, risk mitigation, while reinforcing the mutual benefit, on-time delivery, and market competitiveness. Your solution-oriented framing transforms your ask from a demand into a partnership proposal. Throughout, you maintain a steady, collaborative tone. You ask open-ended questions to surface hidden concerns. What timeline adjustments would make this increase more feasible? Which deliverables are most critical to you? Each question invites the other party deeper into the conversation, granting them ownership of the outcome. You listen attentively, nod, and reflect their points. It sounds like you're most worried about vendor commitments leading to unplanned costs. That mirror and label technique diffuses tension and builds rapport, making your ask feel like a joint problem-solving session. Before this moment, you rehearsed relentlessly. You practiced your opening line in the mirror, adjusting your phrasing until it felt effortless. You role-played the scenario with a colleague acting as a tough CFO, firing rapid objections. You refined your responses until they flowed organically. If we can't adjust this quarter, I'll secure temporary staffing under current rates for 6 weeks and revisit budget in Q2. You tested different anchors, 14%, 16%, to gauge which one prompted the smoothest negotiation. When you finally stood before the real decision maker, your rehearsals had become muscle memory, freeing you to focus entirely on the conversation. You also carry a concise evidence sheet in your pocket, 2 bullet points that capture your biggest wins, cost savings from past negotiations, and revenue upside from upcoming launches. If the room grows frosty, you slide the document across, letting data reinforce your case. Here's the ROI projection tied to this increase. This visual backup amps your authority and puts facts at the forefront. You never fumble for proof because you've anticipated the need and placed it within arm's reach, even as the discussion unfolds. You remain mindful of pacing. You speak at a steady tempo, pausing deliberately between key points. This measured pace grants gravity to your words. Each point lands fully before you move on. If you sense the other side drifting or growing defensive, you slow further, giving space for reflection. You know that too rapid a delivery signals anxiety. Too slow creates boredom. Your calibrated rhythm sustains engagement and exudes calm command. When counteroffers emerge, you navigate them with curiosity and firmness. If they suggest a mere 5% increase, you respond. Thank you for that proposal. Could you help me understand what criteria limit the adjustment to 5%? Understanding your constraints will help me refine my ask. You diffuse potential conflict by seeking to learn, not by reacting defensively. Their explanation reveals priorities, cash flow, headcount limits, or policy cycles, which you then address point by point. Given the upcoming product launch's revenue potential, perhaps we could offset the increase with temporary deferrals on non-critical expenses. You remain anchored to your bottom line, 10%. As long as their offer stays above that threshold, you're prepared to accept. If it dips below, you stand and say, I appreciate the discussion. Based on our mutual objectives, I believe 10% is the right path forward. If that's not feasible, let's table this and reconvene next week after further analysis. You exit the conversation with grace, preserving the relationship and signaling that your runway isn't finite. Your BATNA stands ready. After the meeting, you debrief immediately. You journal the exchange. What went well? Where you let the silence falter? Which anchor elicited the strongest reaction? Do you note any unexpected objections and draft responses for next time? You celebrate your wins, landing at 12%, securing the phased approach, and analyze any concessions made. This post-game review turns experience into expertise, sharpening your asks for future negotiations. In your daily life, you apply this same ask architecture. At the coffee shop, you request an extra shot. Could you add a double espresso shot at no extra charge in appreciation of my weekly visits? You pause, watch the barista's body language, and, if needed, offer reciprocity. I'll post a positive review on social media. At home, you ask your partner for a shared chore schedule change. Let's swap laundry and dishes. Would that balance our weekends better? You listen, empathize, and propose a compromise. Each micro-ask strengthens your ability to command larger requests. In digital negotiations, customer support chats, or email renewals, you draft concise, impact-focused messages. As a 24-month subscriber who's referred 5 colleagues, I'm requesting a rate extension at my current plan. I'd be happy to participate in a testimonial. You drop a strategic pause by signing off and then waiting for the response instead of immediately following up. Their ensuing concession, 2 extra months free, feels like a natural win because you asked with clarity, anchored high, and framed the benefit to their marketing efforts by weaving clarity, authority, anchor, silence, collaboration, and rehearsal into every ask. You master the art of bold, irresistible requests. You no longer wonder if you should ask. You know when and how to ask. You speak your worth into existence, shaping outcomes with precision. Each successful ask fuels your confidence. Each tactical silence deepens your influence, and each collaborative frame solidifies your relationships. This is the pivot from passive to purposeful communication, where bold asks become the catalyst for transformation and the currency of your daily life. You settle into your chair, lean forward, and remind yourself that negotiation isn't just about talking, it's about listening. The words you don't speak carry as much weight as those you do. You quiet your inner critic, put aside your next point, and commit to hearing everything your counterpart shares. This is where empathy becomes your superpower. The ability to listen deeply, reflect authentically, and guide the exchange toward mutual gain. First, you stop planning your response mid-sentence. As the other person speaks, your instinct is to formulate your comeback, your rebuttal, your next data point, your pivot. Instead, you let that go. You focus fully on their words, their tone, and their pauses. You note the cadence of their voice, the emotional undertones that ripple beneath the surface. This undistracted presence signals respect. It tells them, your perspective matters. And as they feel heard, they lean in, sharing more information than they intended. Second, you master the strategic pause, the silent close after a question or statement. You ask, what would success look like for you in this deal? Then you stop. You count silently. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. The silence might feel unsettling, but you hold it. Often, the other side will rush to fill that gap, revealing hidden priorities, fears, or concessions. You resist the urge to rescue the conversation with chatter. You let the quiet do the heavy lifting, drawing out insights you can't find any other way. Third, you ask open-ended questions that unlock depth. Instead of, can you agree to this price? You frame, can you walk me through the factors that matter most when setting pricing for your team? This invites narrative, not a las yes or no dead end. You listen for clues, cost constraints, quality concerns, seasonal pressures. You follow up. How do those elements influence your timelines? Each question is a gentle lever, prying open topics you can then address directly. You guide the conversation without dominating it. Fourth, you listen for what's not said. Words convey meaning, but omissions carry secrets. You watch for shifts in posture, a tightened jaw, a flicker of avoidance in eye contact, a sudden clearance of the throat. If someone says, we're comfortable with this timeline, yet their fingers drum anxiously, you pause and ask, you mentioned comfort. What might keep you up at night about this schedule? That prompt encourages them to surface unexpressed worries. You uncover vulnerabilities and address them head on. Fifth, you use empathy as tactical leverage. Empathy isn't weakness. It's understanding the other side's needs so precisely that your proposals feel tailored and irresistible. When your manager admits, I'm under pressure to cut costs, you respond, I hear you. Let's explore options that maintain quality while trimming expenses. Which areas worry you most? You align your offer to their emotional reality. Cost savings plus performance assurance. You're no longer an adversary. You're a collaborator crafting solutions together. Sixth, you mirror and label their emotions. Borrowed from high-stakes negotiators. Mirroring is simply repeating the last few words they said in a curious tone. Cutting costs is important to you? Labeling names the feeling you observe. It seems you're frustrated by these rising expenses. These phrases invite them to elaborate and feel understood. You don't parrot them mockingly. You use a calm, respectful tone that shows genuine curiosity. Mirroring and labeling diffuse tension and foster deeper trust. Seventh, you let them feel in control. People decide more readily when they believe they led the solution. You ask, what approach would make this timeline work for you? Instead of dictating terms, you offer options. Would a phased rollout or a bundled delivery better suit your needs? By presenting choices, You guide without imposing. You relinquish the illusion of control. Paradoxically, this increases your influence because they own the outcome. 8th, you actively record and repeat key points. As the conversation flows, you jot mental or literal notes. They prioritize vendor relationships and worry about supply chain risks. Later, you reference those points. Earlier you mentioned supply chain concerns. Here's how our proposed timeline mitigates that risk by leveraging our local partners. This recall demonstrates attentiveness and builds credibility. You prove that you're not simply pushing an agenda, you're responding to their specific needs. 9th, you practice selective silence after hearing their response. When they offer a concession, we could consider a smaller increase. You pause, resisting the urge to immediately applaud or adjust. You let the idea settle, allowing them to feel the weight of their concession. Then you respond, "Thank you. Could you help me understand what led you to that figure?" This silence plus question combo transforms a tentative agreement into a clarified commitment. 10th, you weave listening insights into your counteroffers. Imagine they reveal that team morale dip under tight deadlines. You propose a performance bonus linked to the accelerated timeline. I understand morale matters. If we hit the early deliverables, I suggest a team celebration budget that aligns incentives and boosts motivation. You speak their language, addressing both factual and emotional drivers. This synergy, solving logistical problems while acknowledging human needs, cements win-win agreements. 11th, you practice active paraphrasing. After they explain their stance, you summarize. So, you're saying the main barrier is budget timing, not overall amount. Is that right? This confirms understanding and prevents misinterpretations. They appreciate that you're listening, and you avoid the common pitfall of talking past each other. Paraphrasing smooths the path to aligned expectations. 12th, you notice when emotions escalate and use the listening to de-escalate. If frustration surfaces, voices grow louder, hands gesture sharply, you step back and acknowledge, "I sense this is important to you. Let's slow down and unpack the core issues." You let them vent, nodding, breathing, holding space. Once they feel heard, you gently steer back to solutions. By validating emotions first, you restore calm and refocus on objectives. 13th, you integrate listening into digital negotiations. In an email thread, you quote their concerns. You mentioned earlier that vendor lead times are non-negotiable. Here's how our proposal addresses that. In a chat, you reflect, "I see the policy is rigid on pricing. Could you tell me more about how those tiers are structured?" Even behind screens, you mirror, label, and ask thoughtful follow-ups. This virtual empathy builds rapport across any medium. 14th, you cultivate a listening ritual. Before each negotiation, you review your persona's likely motivations. You remind yourself their top 3 priorities are X, Y, Z. You prepare corresponding open-ended questions. During the conversation, you focus on asking first, diagnosing second, proposing third. You maintain this sequence to ensure listening leads your approach, not just your words. 15th, you debrief your listening performance. After each meeting, you journal. Did I interrupt less? Did I catch unspoken cues? Which questions revealed the most? You mark areas for growth. Maybe you need to ask more open-ended questions, or let silence stretch longer. By tracking your listening metrics, you transform passive hearing into active skill building. 16th, you balance listening with assertiveness. Deep listening doesn't mean silence or submission. It means gathering intelligence to strengthen your position. When they finish, you reconnect your ask and their insights. Given your focus on risk reduction, could we structure a pilot phase that limits exposure while evaluating outcomes? This pivot shows that their input drove your proposal, which deepens commitment and eases acceptance. 17th, you foster empathy beyond words. You observe environmental cues, a photo of a family, a favorite sports team logo, or a pet picture on their desk. And you weave in personal touches. I remember you mentioned your son's baseball tournament. Hope it went well. These moments humanize the exchange and reinforce your genuine engagement. Rapport built on authenticity multiplies the power of your listening. Finally, you recognize that listening is a lifelong practice, not a one-off tactic. You cultivate curiosity in everyday life, listening to baristas, neighbors, service reps, with the same intensity you reserve for major negotiations. You ask meaningful questions over dinner. You reflect emotions in casual chat, and you treat every conversation as an opportunity to refine your empathy muscle. Over time, this habit rewires your brain to detect subtle cues, anticipate needs, and connect deeply. When you master these listening and empathy techniques, you transform negotiation from blunt force into a dance of mutual understanding. You uncover the hidden drivers of decisions, you surface creative solutions, and you build lasting trust. You listen not just to respond, but to reveal the human story behind every ask. In that space, influence becomes natural, and even the toughest negotiations yield collaborative outcomes. You feel the air shift as the word "no" lands on the table. Your pulse quickens for a moment until you remind yourself, this is not a dead end, it's a doorway. Rejection is feedback in disguise, a gift of data that reveals underlying needs, fears, and priorities. When you reframe "no" as the start of deeper inquiries rather than a final verdict, you transform setbacks into stepping stones. Here's how you turn every no into an opportunity for insight, connection, and eventual yes. First, you pause and breathe. Your immediate impulse may be to argue, to justify, to apologize, but you resist. You inhale steady through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and settle your shoulders. This brief pause gives you emotional space to detach from surprise or discomfort. You center yourself in calm curiosity rather than panic. In that moment, you reframe rejection as data, not judgment. No becomes a signal. There's more to learn. Second, you ask the powerful question, what would need to change for this to become possible? You deliver it with genuine curiosity. Voice calm and level. This question flips the power dynamic. Instead of walking away dejected, you invite the other side to reveal the barriers behind their no. You open a window onto their true concerns, budget limits, timing conflicts, policy constraints, or unspoken fears. Their response illuminates the path forward. Third, you listen actively to their explanation, applying your mirror and label techniques. If they say, "We can't stretch the budget further," you mirror, "You can't stretch the budget further." And label, "It sounds like cost constraints are a major obstacle." This reflection shows you value their reality and encourages them to expand. They might continue, "We've already committed funds to other priorities." Now you gather actionable intelligence instead of grappling in the dark. Fourth, you reframe their concerns into collaborative problem solving. You acknowledge their constraints. I understand that budget cycles are locked until next quarter. And then pivot to exploring alternatives. What if we reallocate existing resources or phase the increase over 2 quarters? By positioning yourself as an ally addressing their problem, you shift from adversary to partner. You tap into the same win-win mindset that animates every negotiation. Fifth, you harvest lessons from each rejection through immediate journaling. You capture 3 key takeaways: the reason for the no, the emotions you observed, and potential pivot. You note the exact phrasing that triggered resistance and the fresh data point they shared. You record these insights while they are still vivid. This habit turns every setback into a learning session, accelerating your skill growth far beyond wishful reflection. Sixth, you practice rejection reframing during low-stakes interactions. You ask your barista for a free upgrade on a latte. When they decline, you ask, under what circumstances might an upgrade be possible? They might explain loyalty program rules or staffing constraints. You note their policy, thank them, and move on. The small rehearsals build emotional resilience and normalize hearing no without taking it personally. Seventh, you deploy the emotional buffer before high-stakes asks. You spend a minute visualizing rejection and your calm response. You imagine hearing no, pausing, asking the follow-up question, and gathering feedback. You practice that sequence until it feels natural. This mental preparation inoculates you against shock. So the real no barely jars your confidence. Instead, you slip into inquisitor mode, data-driven, composed, strategic. Eighth, you normalize no as part of every negotiation dance. You remind yourself, every yes is built on a series of no's that we explored. You anticipate a few rejections before landing your ask. But you map your likely push points and draft targeted responses for each. This pre-planning reframes rejection as expected feedback rather than a personal failure. You carry each no as a stepping stone toward the eventual yes. Ninth, you cultivate the habit of following up after a rejection. You don't vanish, you nurture the relationship. You send a brief note. Thank you for your transparency earlier. I appreciate understanding the constraints. I'll revisit this in 3 months. Once budget cycles reset, in the meantime, I'll work on alternative proposals that align with your priorities. This follow-up preserves goodwill, reinforces your professionalism, and keeps the door open for future possibilities. 10th, you leverage rejection to sharpen your evidence and rationale. When you hear, no, the timeline is too tight, you ask, which part of the timeline concerns you most? They might specify resource allocation or vendor dependencies. You then refine your data. Perhaps you secure a temporary contractor or negotiate faster vendor terms. Your revised ask addresses the precise concern they raised, making it exponentially harder to decline next time. 11th, you share real-world stories of perseverance. When you explain your journey, you demystify the process. You recount how you pitched a counterproposal, heard 3 no's in a row, then landed a yes after reframing your ask. These narratives reassure collaborators that rejection isn't the end, it's a natural pivot point. You model resilience and inspire trust through vulnerability. 12th, you observe the difference between hard no and soft no. A hard no is flat and unyielding. A soft no often contains qualifiers. We can't right now, or not at that level. You train yourself to detect these nuances. A soft no signals possible flexibility. You press with curiosity. A hard no might indicate a boundary you respect and revisit later. Differentiating these shades prevents wasted energy and directs your follow-up strategy. 13th, you decouple self-worth from outcomes. You internalize that hearing out what no doesn't diminish your value. Instead, you remind yourself of your self-belief anchor. I've achieved X, Y, made Z. My worth isn't defined by this single outcome. You lean on your clarity of value and your BATNA to maintain equanimity. In doing so, you protect your confidence from the ups and downs of external validation. 14th, you schedule no debrief sessions. After a significant rejection, you set aside 15 minutes to reflect. What did you learn? How can you adapt? Which underlying assumptions proved incorrect? You document your action plan, revise your proposal, gather new data, or deepen rapport. This structured approach transforms emotional reactions into strategic progress. 15th, you embrace the art of the pivot. When faced with rejection on one front, say salary increase, you explore other negotiations within the same conversation, additional PTO, project leadership roles, or professional development budgets. You treat rejection on a single point as an invitation to expand the negotiation spectrum. Your goal isn't just to win one ask, but to maximize overall value through creative bundling. 16th, you practice detachment through iterative check-ins. You remind yourself, I want this outcome, but I don't need this outcome. This mantra frees you from desperation. You anchor to your purpose, solving problems and creating value, rather than fixating on a single ask. With this mindset, rejection feels like a temporary reroute, not a permanent roadblock. 17th, you celebrate the act of asking, regardless of the result. You track your number of asks versus number of yeses, treating rejection as a normal ratio of progress. Each ask is a micro-victory in courage. You log them in your journal, pairing each no with a commemoration. I asked. I learned. I'm one step closer. This ritual shifts focus from outcome to effort and growth. 18th, you embed rejection resilience into your routines. You share your rejection stories with peers, normalizing the experience. You gather collective wisdom on pivot strategies. You host micro workshops where team members practice handling no sharing reframing techniques and role-playing tough callbacks. By creating a culture that honors the learning behind rejection, you and your colleagues accelerate your negotiation mastery. 19th, you weave rejection insights into your long-term strategy. After multiple no's on budget increases, you decide to pilot a smaller project first, demonstrate success, then scale. You use early rejections to build a track record that builds credibility. Each no informs your roadmap, which data to amplify, which stakeholders to engage, which timing, windows to target. Finally, you honor the transformative power of rejection. You remember that every breakthrough you've achieved emerged from moments of no that you navigated with curiosity, resilience, and strategic reframing. You keep a rejection trophy case, a private list of the hardest no's you turned into yeses. Whenever doubt creeps in, you revisit that list, drawing strength from proof of your capacity to turn rejection into opportunity. When you master the art of handling rejection, you flip the narrative. No longer is no a barrier. It's the beginning of a deeper negotiation. You greet each refusal with poised curiosity, harvest its hidden wisdom, and pivot with purpose. In this way, you transform rejection from stumbling block into springboard, fueling your growth, sharpening your strategy, and paving the path to lasting yeses. You lean back in your chair and let the room breathe around you. In this charged moment, you realize that silence isn't emptiness. It's a dynamic force that reveals truth, manages emotion, and signals unshakable confidence. When you master strategic silence, you transform gaps in sound into openings for insight and influence. Here's how you wield silence as your secret weapon. First, you understand the information gap at work. When conversation stops, people instinctively try to fill the void. That instinct compels them to reveal more than they intended. You ask a probing question. What would you need to see to feel comfortable with these timeline? Then you stop. Not a word follows your inquiry. You count internally to 3, maybe 5, never rushing to rescue the moment. Almost always. The other party leans forward and speaks again, offering details you couldn't coax out otherwise. Next, you practice the after-ask pause. You deliver your bold request. I'd like a 12% increase to cover the expanded scope. And then you hold still. You resist the urge to justify, clarify, or apologize. In that stillness, you watch micro-expressions, the flicker of surprise, the narrowing of eyes, the slight nod. You glean information about how your ask landed. Maybe they tilt their head, hinting at curiosity. Maybe their arms cross, signaling resistance. That insight guides your next move. You also deploy reflective silence when they speak. After they share a concern, we can't commit until we see performance data. You don't blurt a response. You pause, letting their words echo. This pause sends a clear message. You've heard them. You value their input, and you're not rattled. When you finally speak, your answer is more considered, more powerful, and more respectful of their position. In group settings, you use silence to manage dynamics. During a roundtable discussion, you propose terms and then deliberately stay quiet. As panelists shift uncomfortably, someone will break the silence to defend or agree. This technique prevents conversation from spiraling into chaos. It forces each participant to weigh in, ensuring no one dominates and revealing the real priorities of the group. You refine your silences through daily micro-experiments. At the cafe, after ordering your usual, you pause before confirming. I'll have my regular latte, and hold that pause. You sense the barista's uncertainty. Do you want oat milk or almond? Do you want an extra shot? Their follow-up question clarifies details you hadn't even considered yet. You emerge with a drink tailored to your exact preference. That tiny pause sharpens your instincts for bigger arenas. You become sensitive to cultural contexts for silence. You recall that some colleagues from certain regions interpret silence as agreement, while others view it as discomfort. When negotiating with a team that values brevity, you hold a shorter pause, 2 seconds, then follow with a clarifying question. With colleagues who appreciate reflection, you extend the silence to 4 or 5 seconds. You adjust your rhythm until your silences speak the right cultural message. In digital negotiations, you harness timing of messages as silence. When you send a concise email, ask, could we finalize terms by Friday to secure current rates? You deliberately wait to follow up, resisting the impulse to send just checking in messages. That silence often compels a response, because people prefer to fill empty inboxes than leave threads dangling indefinitely. You monitor typing indicators in chat. When they appear, you stand by. When they disappear, you give them time to craft a thoughtful reply. You also use pause points in presentations. When you share a key slide, say projected ROI figures, you stop speaking, let the numbers sink in, and maintain eye contact. The audience leans forward, taking in the data. You then invite questions. What strikes you most about these projections? Their responses reveal priorities you can address in real time. Without that pause, you risk glossing over critical details. You guard against overusing silence. You know that too many gaps can feel awkward or manipulative. You intersperse strategic pauses with engaged listening and clear follow-ups. You balance stillness with movement, leaning forward to signal interest, nodding to encourage more, then pausing again. This rhythm keeps the conversation alive and respectful. When facing high-pressure objections, you harness silence to manage emotion. A raised voice can trigger your fight or flight response. Instead, you pause, regulate your breath, and remain still. Your calm in action disarms aggression and invites the other person to mirror your composure. Often, they lower their volume mid-sentence, shifting from confrontation to collaboration. You cultivate metronomic breathing to support your silences. You inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6, and synchronize that with your pauses. This practice lowers your heart rate and reinforces calm confidence. As you pause, air moves steadily in and out, anchoring you in presence. Observers sense this steadiness and assume your mind is as clear as your posture. You use silence to navigate competing voices. In a room with multiple stakeholders, if 2 people speak over each other, you hold your silence long enough for one to stop. You then calmly invite the other to continue, establishing order without blunt interruption. Your measured pauses become the punctuation that clarifies dialogue and prevents derailment. You also integrate conscious silence into brainstorming sessions. When ideas flood the table, you pose an open-ended question. What new solutions can we imagine? And then hold a deliberate pause. The group falls quiet for a moment. Then novel ideas emerge, often more creative and considered than rapid back and forth allows. But your silence unlocks deeper thinking. Before entering any negotiation, you rehearse your silence strategy. You script not only your ask, but also your follow-up pauses. You practice in a mirror, noticing when your shoulders tend to slump if you rush. You refine your facial expressions, relaxed brows, soft gaze, slight smile. When you hold silence, your calm visage signals genuine waiting, not discomfort. You build muscle memory so your pauses feel as natural as your words. You log the effects of your silences in your negotiation journal. After each meeting, you note where you paused, how long you held it, and what revelations followed. You track patterns. Perhaps a 2 or 3 second pause yields more information than a 5-second stalemate. Over time, you calibrate your pause durations to maximize impact in different contexts. You also harvest micro-victories from silence. When a client volunteers new budget flexibility after your pause, you celebrate internally. You mark it as evidence of silence's power. When a teammate clarifies hidden concerns during a gap in conversation, you record that insight. These small wins reinforce your commitment to strategic quietude. When negotiations stretch into tense standoffs, you deploy reset silence. You take a sip of water, place the glass down, and simply stare at your notes without speaking. This full-stop pause resets the emotional field, diffusing rising tension. It signals that the conversation can and should proceed with renewed decorum. Often, all parties take a collective breath and realign around more constructive dialogue. You also link silence with empathy. You observe when someone's tone trembles or their posture tenses. You pause, letting them feel safe to unburden. Their resulting honesty, "I'm worried this will strain resources," gives you the raw material to craft targeted solutions. Silence, in this context, becomes an act of caring, demonstrating that you're willing to wait and listen. You refuse to let silence become an avoidance tactic. When difficult topics arise, you embrace the pause to shatter discomfort rather than sidestep it. You pose a tough question. What concerns keep you from committing? Then stop. You resist the urge to shift into easier terrain. Your silence stays, urging both sides to confront the real barrier. This courageous hold deepens trust and paves the way for authentic resolution. You treat silence as a co-negotiator. You thank it when it surfaces valuable insight. You learn from its timing, and you refine your use through constant practice. You never fill every gap. Instead, you let each pause speak your confidence and compel the other side to reveal what truly matters. In every context, whether you're negotiating a car purchase, seeking project buy-in, resolving a family disagreement, or closing a subscription renewal, mastering strategic silence sets you apart. You move beyond the words themselves to the spaces between them, harnessing the full spectrum of communication. You speak less and listen more, pausing to turn quiet into clarity, tension into insight, stalemate into breakthrough. When you weave silence seamlessly into your negotiation repertoire, you unlock a powerful truth. The loudest voice doesn't always win. The most deliberate one does. You command respect not by volume, but by the weight you place on each word and each well-timed silence. And in that space, your influence expands, your understanding deepens, and every conversation becomes a gateway to new possibilities. You lean forward and breathe in the possibilities, knowing that no negotiation truly begins until you communicate the value you bring. Asking boldly and listening deeply have paved the way. And now it's time to present your offer so irresistibly that it feels less like selling and more like shared discovery. You're about to master the value equation, the framework that transforms features into benefits, numbers into narratives, and proposals into partnerships. At its core, the value equation rests on 3 pillars: clarity, relevance, and trust. Clarity means articulating exactly what you deliver and why it matters. Relevance means tailoring that message to the other side's unique needs. Trust means backing your claims with proof and integrity. When these elements align, resistance melts away and collaboration flourishes. You don't push, you guide. You don't persuade, you empower. Your goal isn't to convince, it's to connect. First, you wield clarity like a laser beam. You avoid generic statements and ambiguous jargon. Instead of, "Our solution streamlines workflows," you say, "Our automated reporting tool reduces your weekly data prep time by 50%, freeing your team to focus on strategic analysis." You quantify outcomes and spell out timelines: 3 days instead of quickly, 20% instead of somi. This precision prevents misinterpretation and positions your offer as undeniably concrete. Second, you elevate relevance by mirroring their priorities. Before the conversation, you review your intelligence map, their current pain points, strategic goals, and urgent deadlines. You frame your value in their language. Because you're targeting a 15% sales growth next quarter, integrating this CRM module positions you to capture that revenue by automating lead scoring. By linking your solution directly to their objectives, you turn skepticism into curiosity. Third, you build trust through transparency and evidence. You share real case studies. When Company X implemented this tool, they saw a 30% drop in manual errors. Here's the data. You present testimonials from peers they respect. You offer a live demonstration or pilot period. You highlight potential risks and mitigation plans rather than glossing over downsides. This openness dispels suspicion and cements credibility. You also lead with questions to uncover hidden drivers. Before launching your pitch, you ask, what outcomes matter most to you in the next 6 months? Or, what would success look like if we solved this challenge together? You pause, listen, and let those answers guide the narrative of your value proposition. By starting with their world, you show genuine curiosity and position your solution as a direct response to their priorities. Next, you paint vivid outcomes with storytelling. You use metaphors they recognize. Think of our onboarding process as an express train, not a local shuttle. What used to take 4 weeks now arrives at full speed in 4 days. You share a mini story. Last quarter, we worked with a team just like yours. They were drowning in spreadsheets until this tool acted like a life raft. These narratives tap into emotions and help them envision the transformation. Value stacking is another potent tactic. You layer benefits: speed, accuracy, flexibility, support, so that the combined package exceeds the cost. You say, not only does the solution cut data errors by half, but it also integrates seamlessly with your existing platform, offers 24/7 support, and includes quarterly training. Each added element piles onto perceived value, making your ask feel more than reasonable. Yet you guard against overwhelming them with detail. You practice simplicity. 3 key benefits, 3 supporting data points, and 1 call to action. You avoid technical deep dives unless invited. You know that too many features can bury benefits. Instead, you focus on their top 3 concerns, address them directly, and leave ancillary features for follow-up discussions. Timing amplifies your impact. You introduce value after you've established rapport and listened to their needs. You avoid leading with price. Instead, you demonstrate outcomes first, then anchor the cost as an investment. You might say, now that we've explored the bottom line, gains and process efficiencies, let's discuss the investment required to make this happen. This sequence positions cost as the final checkbox, not the opening barrier. Selling through service underpins your mindset. You frame your offer as a helpful solution, not a transaction. You say, I'm here to identify how we can alleviate your biggest headaches, rather than, I want to sell you our package. This attitude shifts the energy. You're a problem solver, not a salesperson. It invites collaboration and builds long-term partnership. In everyday life, you apply these principles seamlessly. At your local cafe, you ask for a loyalty discount by highlighting your weekly visits and social media shout-out. I visit 5 mornings a week and tag you on Instagram. Could I lock in a 10% discount? You pause after stating your case. Watch the barista's reaction. then offer, "I'm happy to leave a review or refer friends in return." You leverage clarity, number of visits, relevance, their marketing goals, and trust, your willingness to help. At home, you negotiate chores by stacking benefits. "If I handle laundry and dishes this week, you could take on the grocery shopping and meal prep. That frees us both up for Friday movie night." You quantify time savings and tie it to quality of life. You frame it as a shared service exchange, not a favor. Your partner hears its win-win nature and readily agrees. Digital negotiations follow the same blueprint. When pursuing an extended subscription rate, you craft a concise email. "As a 3-year subscriber who's referred 10 members, I'm requesting a rate extension at my current plan. I'll gladly write a testimonial or case study to support your marketing." You anchor your ask to your loyalty and potential promotional value. After sending, you resist the urge to follow up too quickly, letting your silence underscore confidence. In vendor discussions, you ask leading questions. What metrics do you track for this service? What ROI benchmarks matter most to you? You adapt your proposal to those metrics, then demonstrate how your offering hits each one. You present a simple visual, perhaps a slide or chart, mapping their KPIs to your solution's features. You reinforce trust by offering references from similar clients. The analogies help you bridge complex concepts. In a software sale, you compare your solution to familiar daily tools. It's like upgrading from a flip phone camera to a DSLR. You'll still capture moments, but with precision and creative control. This comparison demystifies technical details and highlights clear benefits. Testimonials and case studies serve as social proof. You weave in quotes. "Company Y said, 'This integration became our team's backbone, accelerating our workflow by 3 days each week.'" You feature metrics alongside names and roles. This combination of story and number transforms anecdotes into persuasive evidence. When differentiating your proposal from competitors, you dramatize the unique angle. Unlike Solution A, which offers only basic reporting, our platform provides predictive analytics powered by your own historical data, so you're not just reacting, you're forecasting trends. You highlight what they can't get elsewhere, amplifying perceived value. Handling objections becomes smoother when you reframe them through value. If they say, "Your price is higher than competitor B," you respond, "I understand. Competitor B's entry-level plan lacks our automation engine and 24/7 support. If we factor in the cost of manual data cleanup and weekend downtime, our total cost of ownership is actually lower." You anchored the conversation to benefits and long-term savings. After every negotiation, you debrief your value communication. You note which benefits resonated most and which illustrations fell flat. You record in your journal. The predictive analytics demo sparked the most interest, or they asked twice about ROI numbers. Next time, lead with those. Those insights refine your approach and sharpen your delivery. Continuous practice cements these skills. You role-play value pitches with peers, challenging each other to respond with tough objections. You test different metaphors, question orders, and delivery speeds. You time your presentations, noting when attention wanes. You iterate until your value communication flows as naturally as conversation. Finally, you weave the value equation into your daily rhythm. Every time you propose a plan, request a favor, or pitch an idea, you articulate clear benefits, tailor them to your audience, and back them with proof. You speak less about features and more about outcomes. You focus less on price and more on impact. You cultivate trust through transparency and service. In doing so, you transform negotiation from a hard sell into an effortless exchange of mutual gain. You sit across the table, eyes locked, and recognize that the most enduring deals aren't forged through one-sided victories, but through mutual triumphs. Win-win agreements are the foundation for lasting relationships, trust, and repeat collaboration. When you design deals that satisfy both your interests and theirs, you transform negotiation from a zero-sum contest into a shared journey. Here's how you construct agreements that leave everyone feeling like a winner. You begin by distinguishing positions from interests. A position is what someone says they want: a lower price, a longer deadline, or a larger budget. An interest is why they want it, their underlying motivations or concerns. You ask yourself, what drives their positions? You probe with open-ended questions. Why is that deadline critical? Or, what priorities underlie your pricing limits? As they reveal their true interests: risk avoidance, resource constraints, quality standards. You map those onto your own. You list your interests: fair compensation, timely delivery, relationship continuity. You list theirs: cost control, risk mitigation, and reputation protection. With this shared map, you see where interests align and diverge. Next, you expand the pie before dividing it. Instead of haggling over a fixed resource, you brainstorm creative ways to create additional value. Perhaps you can offer extended maintenance instead of a price cut, or accelerated training in exchange for a longer contract term. You frame it as exploration. What additional services or guarantees would make this partnership more valuable for both of us? You encourage free-form dialogue, recording every idea without judgment. You might discover that a flexible payment schedule, co-branding opportunities, or bundled support hours unlock new value. By exploring options together, you generate a larger pie, more benefits for all. You then practice log rolling, trading off concessions across issues of unequal importance. You ask, which elements matter most and which are less critical? You propose a matrix, listing issues on one axis and relative importance on the other. Maybe delivery timing ranks highest for them, while scope expansion is secondary. For you, scope flexibility might be vital. With delivery window, less so. You say, I'm willing to be flexible on timeline if we can add 2 extra features to the scope. This trade allows each side to gain on their highest priority items while conceding on lesser ones. Log rolling transforms competing demands into complementary solutions. Fairness is the invisible glue that holds win-win deals together. You open the conversation on objective criteria, market benchmarks, industry standards, or precedent agreements. You reference these benchmarks. According to recent reports, the average contract for this service in our industry is valued between X and Y. Tech. You invite them to weigh in. Does this range reflect your expectations? By anchoring to objective data, you reduce perceptions of bias and ground your agreement in shared reality. When both parties agree on a fairness benchmark, concessions feel justified rather than arbitrary. Transparency boosts trust. You decide which information to share, enough to build confidence, but without giving away strategic secrets prematurely. You disclose relevant data, cost breakdowns, project timelines, performance metrics. You might say, I'll share our cost model for this feature so you can see how we arrived at this pricing. This level of openness signals respect and encourages reciprocity. It shifts the dynamic from suspicion to partnership, creating a collaborative atmosphere ripe for win-win solutions. As you craft the agreement, you adopt interest-based framing rather than positional language. Instead of, I need $10, you say, to ensure we can meet your quality standards and cover our development costs, I propose X tour. This framing ties your ask to mutual objectives. You reinforce that you're solving shared problems, not enforcing demands. This subtle shift in language cultivates empathy and cooperation. You then codify your shared ideas into clear, concise terms and conditions. You outline deliverables, timelines, payment schedules, and responsibilities in a structured document. You avoid vague language, no as needed or reasonable efforts. Instead, you specify deliverable A includes a functional prototype by June 1. Payment of 30% is due within 10 days of acceptance. This precision prevents future misunderstandings and establishes clear accountability. You include flexibility clauses to address uncertainty. You might add a provision. In the event of scope changes exceeding 10%, parties will renegotiate timelines and fees in good faith within 5 business days. This clause acknowledges that projects evolve and ensures you can adapt without derailing the partnership. By anticipating change, you demonstrate realism and foresight. Next, you introduce performance incentives to align rewards with outcomes. You propose bonus payments for early completion or penalties for missed deadlines, calibrated symmetrically. For example, if project milestones are met 1 week ahead of schedule, a bonus of 5% of total contract value applies. If delayed beyond 2 weeks, a penalty of 2% applies. The structure motivates both sides to uphold commitments and shares risk and reward evenly. To foster long-term collaboration, you embed renewal and review mechanisms. You write, at the 6-month mark, we will convene a joint review to assess performance, user feedback, and potential enhancements. If mutually agreed, the contract may be extended under revised terms. This ongoing review keeps the relationship dynamic and ensures that both parties remain invested in continuous improvement. Clear documentation and sign-off procedures seal the deal. You specify who must sign, in what order, and by when. You include annexes, background information, defined glossaries, communication protocols, and escalation paths. You ensure every stakeholder understands where to look for details. You circulate the final draft with a covering email summarizing key points. Attached is our draft agreement reflecting our discussions. Please review sections 2, 4, and 7 for scope, payment terms, and performance incentives. This email frames the document and directs attention to critical components. You also consider cultural and organizational norms in drafting. You adjust formality based on their corporate culture. More structured language for highly regulated industries. More conversational tone for startups. You confirm whether legal review is required and accommodate their timelines. This sensitivity to process reinforces respect and smooths execution. When you present the final document, you walk them through each section, linking text to the interests you identified earlier. You saying, Section 3 codifies our timeline agreement tied to milestone bonuses, reflecting your need for timely delivery. You pause, ask if anything needs clarification, and note their feedback. This guided walkthrough ensures mutual understanding and prevents last-minute surprises. After sign-off, You archive the agreement in a shared repository, accessible to all involved. You schedule reminders for review clauses and milestone check-ins. You set calendar invites for the 6-month evaluation meeting. You assign clear ownership for tasks like invoice approvals and performance tracking. This level of operational detail ensures the agreement lives beyond signature day and drives follow-through. Even after the deal is done, you maintain the spirit of win-win partnership. You deliver regular status updates that highlight achieved milestones and upcoming tasks. You solicit feedback proactively. Is the quality meeting your expectations? Are there any adjustments we should consider? You treat the agreement as a living document, open to adjustments through mutual consent. This ongoing engagement cements trust and demonstrates your commitment to their success. You further solidify goodwill through celebratory rituals. After a major milestone, you send a thank you note or a small token of appreciation, perhaps a summary report of achieved outcomes alongside a short video testimonial. You mark successes publicly in team meetings, giving credit to the other party. These gestures reinforce that the win-win spirit extends beyond cold contract language into genuine partnership. In your everyday micro-negotiations, you employ win-win design instinctively. When dividing chores at home, you list everyone's needs: clean space, free time, fun activities, and assign tasks accordingly, allowing each family member to pick preferred chores first and rotating the rest. You document the schedule on a shared calendar with check-in dates for adjustments. At work, you negotiate cross-departmental resource sharing by crafting a memorandum of understanding that outlines shared goals, resource commitments, and joint review dates. You build the same structures, interests, trade-offs, documentation, incentives on every scale. By embedding these practices, interest framing, pie expansion brainstorming, log rolling, fairness benchmarks, transparent evidence, clear documentation, performance incentives, renewal clauses, and ongoing engagement, you create agreements that stand the test of time. You design deals where both sides leave the table energized, respected, and invested in mutual success. You transform negotiation from a transactional sprint into a collaborative marathon. When you master a win-win agreement design, you become more than a negotiator. You become a builder of partnerships, a curator of trust, and an architect of shared value. You elevate every deal from a mere exchange to a strategic alliance. And in that realm, your influence multiplies, your relationships deepen, and every agreement becomes a testament to the art of collaboration. You settle into the understanding that your reputation is your most valuable currency. Every word you speak, every tactic you deploy, builds or erodes trust, and in negotiation, trust is the foundation upon which lasting agreements stand. Ethics and integrity aren't fluffy ideals. They're strategic assets that open doors, deepen relationships, and multiply your influence. When you operate with unwavering honesty, you signal reliability. When you honor your commitments, you earn credibility. Here's how you embed ethics into every negotiation, ensuring that your power is rooted in principle, not manipulation. First, you define your personal ethical standards. Before any conversation, you articulate your core values: fairness, transparency, respect, and reciprocity. You ask yourself, what behaviors will I uphold, even under pressure? You commit to truthfulness, no exaggerations of data, no misrepresentations of your intent. You vow to treat others with respect, avoiding personal attacks or derogatory remarks. You choose reciprocity over exploitation, seeking mutual benefit rather than one-sided gain. By clarifying your non-negotiables, you create a moral compass that guides your decisions in the heat of the moment. Next, you practice principled negotiations, rooted in 4 key pillars: separate people from problems, focus on interests, generate options for mutual gain, and use objective criteria. You remind yourself to treat the other party as a partner in problem solving, not an adversary to defeat. You listen to understand their underlying interests rather than fixate on positions. You brainstorm creative options together before committing to terms. And you anchor decisions in fair external standards, market rates, industry benchmarks, legal precedents, rather than personal power plays. This framework channels your strategic creativity towards shared value creation. Transparency becomes your ally. You determine which information to share openly: your project constraints, your performance metrics, your budget breakdowns, so the other side can make informed decisions. You avoid manipulative tactics like withholding key details or lodging hidden agenda items. Instead, you present relevant facts. Here's our cost structure for the service. You clarify your assumptions. These projections assume a 10% growth rate. By being upfront, you reduce suspicion and invite reciprocal candor. Transparency signals respect for the other party's autonomy and capacity to make sound judgments. You also practice discretion, where strategic silence doesn't cross ethical lines. You guard confidential data, trade secrets, personal information, proprietary insights, protecting both your interests and theirs. You never leak or exploit sensitive details. When you share information, you confirm permissions. I'll send over that client feedback once I have authorization. Hey Murray, this dual approach, transparent with shared facts, discreet with confidential data, balances openness with responsibility. Cultural sensitivity underpins your ethical stance. You recognize that norms for disclosure, directness, and negotiation vary widely. In some cultures, long pauses and indirect language signal respect. In others, they indicate evasiveness. You research your counterpart's background, their communication style, hierarchies, decision-making protocols. You adapt your approach, perhaps softening your phrasing for a high-context culture or being more explicit in low-context environments. You inquire, how does your team prefer to share feedback rather than imposing your own style? This respect for cultural norms fosters trust and rapport. When faced with unethical tactics from the other side, blatant lies, intimidation, bait and switch, you stay calm and principled. You pause, document the behavior, and respond firmly. I value honesty in our discussions. Could you clarify why this information changed? You don't retaliate with deceit. You call out the tactic directly, yet respectfully. If the other party persists, you remind them of agreed upon ground rules or walk away. Protecting your integrity, you understand that tolerating bad faith once invites more. Enforcing ethical boundaries maintains the integrity of the process. You establish clear negotiation ground rules at the outset. You propose a mutual agreement to conduct discussions with respect and transparency. You say, let's agree to share relevant data openly and communicate in good faith. If either of us feels uncomfortable, we'll pause and address it. This pre-negotiation pact sets the tone and gives both sides a reference point for ethical conduct. It signals your commitment to integrity and invites the same from your counterpart. You guard against misrepresentation by verifying facts rigorously. When the other side cites market rates or industry trends, you cross-check reputable sources. If they quote a competitor's offer, you request documentation. When you receive their data, you thank them and confirm your understanding. So, you mentioned a 20% cost increase. Was that based on last quarter's spending? This careful validation prevents you from building your case on shaky foundations and demonstrates your respect for accuracy. In drafting agreements, you ensure clarity and precision. You avoid vague language that can be exploited later. Instead of reasonable efforts, you specify completion within 30 days of project start. You define key terms in a glossary. You include clear acceptance and escalation procedures. This precision prevents disputes born of ambiguity and honors the principle that fair negotiations require clear, shared definitions. You leverage objective criteria to justify terms rather than rely on power or persuasion. When discussing pricing, you reference industry benchmarks. According to the 2024 Association report, average rates range from XES to MY. When negotiating delivery timelines, you cite historical data. Our average turnaround has been 5 days with 0 defect rates. By grounding your proposal in external standards, you defer to shared measures of fairness rather than subjective will. When concessions are made, you document them faithfully. You send a follow-up email summarizing agreed adjustments. As discussed, we will extend the project timeline by 2 weeks, and in return, you'll agree to the revised payment schedule. You attach this summary to the contract draft. By capturing concessions in writing, you honor transparency and prevent later misunderstandings. You treat mistakes as opportunities to reinforce integrity. If you inadvertently misstate a fact or overlook a detail, you correct it immediately. I realize I misstated our service capacity from 5 to 7 deliveries per week. My apologies. I want to ensure we proceed with accurate information. This prompt correction preserves trust and models accountability. You cultivate ethical vigilance by journaling your decisions. After each negotiation, you reflect on your conduct. Did I uphold my transparency pledge? Where did I feel tempted to hedge or conceal? You note any ethical dilemmas you encountered and how you resolved them. This ongoing self-audit sharpens your moral awareness and strengthens your commitment to principled behavior. In team settings, you foster an ethical negotiation culture. You share your own ethical guidelines and invite colleagues to codify theirs. You host debriefs focused on integrity. What ethical challenges did we face? How can we support each other in upholding standards? You celebrate ethical wins, instances where team members chose transparency or walked away from bad faith deals, reinforcing the value of integrity. You also use ethical storytelling to inspire trust. You share narratives of past negotiations where integrity paid off. Perhaps a supplier delivered exceptional service because you honored a handshake agreement, or a client referred you to new business after you candidly addressed an earlier mistake. These stories illustrate that ethical conduct isn't naive, but a long-term investment in reputation and relationship capital. When mentoring less experienced negotiators, you emphasize ethics from day one. You coach them to ask themselves, would I feel comfortable reading about this tactic in the press? If the answer is no, they revise. You model ethical decision-making in real time. inviting them to observe how you navigate pressure without compromising your values. You prepare for ethical conflicts by defining escalation pathways. If you encounter unethical behavior, bribery, coercion, deception, you know whom to consult: legal counsel, a trusted mentor, or a professional association. You report violations as appropriate, protecting both parties' interests and upholding standards. Having a clear plan ensures you don't freeze when confronted with moral challenges. You integrate continuous learning by studying negotiation ethics literature and attending workshops. You stay current on topics like unconscious bias, regulatory changes, and cross-cultural norms. You build a network of ethical negotiators, exchanging insights on emerging challenges. This dedication to growth keeps your moral toolkit sharp and your practices aligned with evolving standards. Finally, you recognize that ethical negotiation is a journey, not a destination. You recommit to your principles daily, treating each conversation as a chance to reinforce your integrity. You measure success not only by outcomes, but by how you achieved them. You know that in the long run, a reputation for fairness and honesty opens more doors than any one-sided victory ever could. When you weave ethics and integrity into every facet of your negotiation process, through principled frameworks, transparent communication, objective criteria, precise documentation, and unwavering respect, you transform your deals into enduring partnerships built on trust. You become known not just as a skilled negotiator, but as a credible, honorable collaborator whose word is bond. And in that reputation lies your greatest negotiating power. You rise to your feet, feeling the culmination of every lesson, every practice session, and every micro moment of courage. Negotiation mastery isn't an endpoint. It's an ongoing journey of self-awareness, adaptation, and growth. In this final section, you integrate every pillar you've learned: mindset, confidence, preparation, asking, listening, handling rejection, silence, value communication, win-win design, and ethics into a cohesive path that carries you beyond singular deals into a lifetime of influence and impact. First, you commit to continuous reflection. After every negotiation, big or small, you carve out time to debrief. You reflect on what you did well, how you spoke your value, how you listened deeply, how you held silence. You identify areas for growth, moments when you rushed your ask, when you hedged your language, when you missed a sign of discomfort. You journal these insights, capturing them in a dedicated negotiation log. Over time, you see patterns emerge, strengths to build on and habits to refine. This reflective discipline ensures that each experience catalyzes your evolution rather than fading into memory. Next, you cultivate a growth mindset. You frame every challenge as an opportunity to learn, rather than a test of your abilities. When you face a stalemate, you don't label it a failure. You view it as feedback on which strategies need adjustment. You anchor yourself in curiosity. What can this teach me about their priorities? You celebrate incremental improvements, slants of progress that signal you're moving closer to mastery. This mental stance propels you forward, turning setbacks into breakthroughs and fueling your resilience. You also embrace lifelong learning. You seek out new negotiation frameworks, read case studies, attend workshops, and join professional communities. You study the tactics of master negotiators, historical figures, industry leaders, conflict resolution experts, and extract insights you can adapt. When AI-driven negotiation tools emerge, you test them, integrate their analytics into your prep, and refine your approach accordingly. By staying curious and open to innovation, you keep your skills relevant and sharp in a changing world. Building a supportive network becomes essential. You connect with peers who share your commitment to principled negotiation. You form a regular study group where you role-play challenging scenarios, exchange feedback, and hold each other accountable for ethical conduct. You mentor newcomers, sharing your frameworks and mindsets, reinforcing your own learning as you teach. You seek guidance from experienced negotiators who challenge you to question assumptions and push boundaries. This network becomes your sounding board and your source of inspiration. To integrate negotiation into your daily life, you establish micro-practice routines, set weekly challenges, ask for a small improvement on a regular service, negotiate a charitable donation to maximize impact, or adjust your exercise routine through self-negotiation. You log each practice, noting the ask, the response, and your emotional state. This disciplined repetition turns negotiation from an occasional event into a fluent habit, so that when high-stakes moments arise, your responses are instinctive. You track quantifiable metrics to gauge progress. You record the number of asks you make versus the number of favorable outcomes. You analyze average concession distances, how far you drop from your anchor to final agreement. You benchmark negotiation times, the speed at which you reach agreements. You graph these metrics quarterly, celebrating upward trends and diagnosing plateaus. Data illuminates your growth curve and reveals areas for targeted improvement. Cultivating self-compassion underpins long-term progress. You recognize that mastery is uneven. Some negotiations soar, others stall. You avoid harsh self-criticism and instead practice kindness. I did my best given the information I had. You celebrate small wins, a confident pause that revealed key insight, a clear ask that secured additional resources, a collaborative solution that delighted both sides. You remind yourself that every step counts, and that self-doubt is simply the next frontier to conquer through courageous practice. You refine your ethical compass over time. You revisit your personal standards periodically, ensuring they align with your evolving values. You reflect on cultural nuances you've encountered, enhancing your sensitivity. You review your negotiation journal for ethical dilemmas, reaffirming your commitment to integrity. When new situations arise, cross-border negotiations, AI-mediated dialogues, virtual reality meeting rooms, you adapt your ethical guidelines to maintain trust in novel contexts. Investing in personal development amplifies your negotiation prowess. You strengthen emotional intelligence through mindfulness, learning to identify and regulate your own emotions as well as others. You expand your communication skills, clearer writing, more confident public speaking, sharper storytelling. You hone analytical abilities to dissect complex deals and spot leverage points quickly. You develop resilience through physical fitness, knowing that mental clarity stems from bodily well-being. You embrace leadership through negotiation, guiding teams and organizations with your skills. You facilitate cross-functional strategy sessions, using your listening and value stacking techniques to align divergent stakeholders. You coach others to negotiate with empathy and purpose, embedding a culture of collaboration. You negotiate not only deals with external partners, but also budgets, resources, and roles within your own organization, fostering environments of mutual respect and shared achievement. As you progress, you evolve into a negotiation architect, designing systems and processes that embed negotiation best practices organization-wide. You introduce negotiation training modules, integrate decision-making frameworks, and institute regular negotiation debrief forums. You advocate for negotiation literacy as a vital life skill across educational and professional settings. You contribute articles, speak at conferences, and mentor aspiring negotiators, extending your impact far beyond individual deals. You remain vigilant against complacency, even at the pinnacle of your skills. You continue to confront new challenges, complex multi-party negotiations, high-stakes cross-cultural mergers, diplomatic dialogues. You tackle them with the same curiosity and humility as your first micro-ask. You know mastery isn't static. It's a dynamic state of perpetual refinement, where each negotiation, each relationship, and each market shift becomes a fresh canvas for your expertise. Your journey culminates in purpose-driven negotiation. You harness your skills not only for personal gain, but to advance causes you believe in: environmental sustainability, social justice, equitable resource distribution. You negotiate partnerships for community development, broker agreements that uplift marginalized voices, mediate conflicts with compassion and fairness. You transform negotiation into a tool for positive change, amplifying its potential beyond boardrooms and into the fabric of society. Through these integrated practices, continuous reflection, growth mindset, lifelong learning, supportive networks, micro-practice routines, metrics tracking, self-compassion, ethical evolution, personal development, leadership, architectural vision, dynamic refinement, and purpose-driven action, you chart a path to true negotiation mastery. You become more than a skilled tactician. You are a visionary collaborator, a trusted advisor, and a catalyst for shared success. You don't just negotiate deals, you cultivate partnerships, inspire progress, and shape the world around you. You have journeyed through the full spectrum of negotiation, from recognizing its presence in everyday moments, to cultivating an unshakable mindset, to armor-like preparation, boldly crafted asks, empathetic listening, reframing rejection, mastering silence, communicating value, designing win-win agreements, upholding ethics, and finally integrating every lesson into a lifelong practice. You now understand that negotiation is not a formality reserved for special occasions, but a dance woven into every conversation, every choice, every moment of daily life. Embrace negotiation as fluency in action. Just as language fluency requires daily immersion, negotiation mastery blossoms through consistent practice. Each morning, set a micro-challenge. Ask a question that stretches your comfort zone. Each evening, debrief in your journal. What did you learn? What will you try differently tomorrow? These disciplined rituals become the heartbeat of your growth. Let your journey inspire others. Share your insights with colleagues. Mentor aspiring negotiators and weave negotiation principles into your teams and communities. As you elevate your own skills, you amplify collective capability, fueling cultures of collaboration, innovation, and respect. Remember, negotiation mastery is rooted in authenticity, presence, and kindness. Speak your truth, listen with empathy, and craft solutions that honor everyone's needs. When you negotiate from a place of genuine purpose, You forge bonds of trust that outlast any single deal. As you step forward, carry this reminder: every conversation is an invitation to create value. You have the tools, the mindset, and the integrity to shape outcomes that reflect your highest aspirations. Approach each day with curiosity and courage, knowing that every ask, every pause, every pivot is an opportunity to practice your art. May your negotiations be guided by clarity, powered by compassion, and grounded in principle. Here's to your ongoing journey. May it be one of endless growth, meaningful connection, and shared success.